Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Stroke Empowerment Sessions. My name is Letitia Living, and I am joined by a special guest, Kenya. Hi, I was going to say good morning, but it's not. It's good evening for you. Good evening, Kenya.
Good morning.
Thank you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
You're welcome. Tell everybody where you're coming in from today.
I am talking to you from California here in the United States.
And it's 5 p.m. on Sunday for you, and it's
Sunday.
Monday morning for me. It's a pleasure to have you on. So, tell us a little bit about you and who you were. Who was Kenya prior to having a stroke?
Kenya was a crazy lady prior to having a stroke. Just during that time was so incredibly busy. I am a mom to three very wonderful children. And at the time, we were living in a city that was 40 minutes away from work, from school, from play, from everything. So we'd start our day extremely early in the morning. Everybody would go to school. I'd pick everybody up. We'd come back to my office, have dinner. I would go and teach because I am an instructor for fitness, dance fitness. I own the studio. I still do. I own the studio. And then I'd pick everybody up from wherever they had to go to. And we'd get back on the road and drive back. So the days were extremely long, starting at 5:30 in the morning and then not getting home till 9:30, 10 o'clock at night, finishing up homework. If I missed anything from the workday, that was my time to get it in. And having taught an evening class would put me in that next energy flow. So it would be before, it wouldn't be before 1 or 2 o'clock in the morning where I'd actually would come down and be ready for bed. And then that alarm clock would go off again and it would be keep going, keep going. So I really feel like the stress and the tension of that had a lot to do with how things built up to be. And I remember the week of the stroke, I was having a conversation with my husband, and I said to him, I feel like we got to change some things. Like, I feel like life is not happening because I'm having to put out so many fires and that I'm living moment to moment. Um, I said, this week's crazy. Let me get through this week. And if by then, can we sit down the weekend and talk about things that we can change? Maybe some of the activities are less. Maybe we redivide some of the responsibilities. And he goes, let's do it now. And I thought, well, no, Friday would be good. Let me just get all the rest of this stuff out of the way. That was on Saturday, and I had the stroke on Tuesday. No, no, no. That was on Saturday. I had a stroke on Monday.
Oh, so do you think subconsciously you knew that you needed to make a change? And
I
yeah,
definitely knew I needed to make a change, but I think very similarly to me pushing it off, I kind of
mm,
feel like if I hadn't, nothing would have gotten me to get to that point to change. And the stroke saved my life in that way.
mhm. Yeah. So tell us, we will come back to that. Um,
Okay,
but tell us about that day. So you were just burning the candle at all ends, and
absolutely.
stress is obviously something that played a major factor in your stroke. What was happening that day? How did you end up in hospital and diagnosed with stroke?
So that day, I remember that morning we were all leaving for school, and my daughter had her driver's license, and it was a day that she normally drove to school. So left with my boys, and I remember putting my hand on the doorknob that day and hearing today's going to be different. And I thought, okay, that's interesting. Okay, we're just going to go. We always start our day with prayer. So I had my youngest son pray. Um, Me and the boys were talking about the day. We wind up calling my daughter and talking about the day because they all had things planned. My youngest son had basketball practice. My oldest son had a study group, and I believe my daughter was tutoring that day. She called me in the middle of the day and she said, "Mom, I don't have to tutor today." I said, "Great. Come to the office when you get done with school because you might be able to head or home early today." Then my son's basketball coach said, "My wife's sick. I'm going to cancel practice." And I thought, whoa, 2 for 3. Kids might be able to go home before we have to change the day because normally they stay. And then my oldest son called and he said, "There's not going to be a study group. I think 2 of the kids had other appointments." And he's like, "We really have to be together to do this." And I thought, okay, this is awesome. They can go home, have dinner, do their homework, and I'll see them later. So when everybody got to the office, we went out, we kind of had ice cream. I think the boys were kind of fighting with one another. There was some bickering, and I was like, let's just make this a fun time. So we go and get fun snacks. I put them on the road, and I'm thinking, gosh, this is great. They can go home early. It'll be a lighter day. I'll go back to the office and wrap things up. And as I'm driving, my husband calls and he says, "Hey, I just wanted to tell you thank you for all your hard work. I was thinking about our conversation about the change that you wanted to make. And I want to let you know it's on my mind." And I said, "Hey, I really appreciate that. I'm getting ready to go to the office and wrap up. The kids have already gone home. I'll see you tonight." So I go to the office, putting together my set for my class. I'm excited about some of the new routines I'm going to put in and just looking forward to that time because it's a time when, or a time that I used to just de stress. So lock up the office, hand on doorknob. I hear again, today is going to be different. And I thought, okay, this is the second time I've heard that. I'm going to take a moment and just remember this because when I get home tonight and lay my head down on the pillow, I'll know that I made it safely. And I say a quick prayer and I leave. I get to the studio. I see all my customers who I love. They're ready to go. I'm ready to go. I go to start the music and this hand is not working. Like I'm trying to press play on my cell phone and I can't, it won't do it. So I think I'm just tired. I hit play with the other hand. I start teaching. 40 minutes of cardio. And by the time we got to the end of the cardio section, I'm tired and I can physically feel how tired I am. And I'm grateful that it's ended because we've got strength portion. I know I can kind of slow down in my mind, slow down my cueing to my customers, but still be effective. So we're doing a routine that is focused on building the upper torso. I've got weights in my hand and the weight drops from my right hand and it hits the floor. And I'm now a little paranoid because I don't remember dropping the weight. There was no signal that the weight was going to drop. It just dropped. And now I'm trying to move through the routine and I'm having trouble balancing. And I'm looking at my class and they're looking at me paranoid. One of the members in the back of the room moved to her purse and she's on the phone. And I'm thinking she just dialed 911, but I'm fine. So I'm telling the class, I'm good. I don't know what's going on, but we're going to finish this routine. I back myself up against the wall and I'm talking to them, talking still the movements, what they should be thinking about, what they should be feeling in their bodies. And in the meanwhile, I'm going, I'm just tired. I'm okay. I'm going to end class. We'll figure this out, but I'm okay. So I tell them once the song is over that I'm not feeling well. I need to sit. And I think we were three songs away from the class being done. And I apologize because I'm sad that they're not going to get their full class. And then I sit down on the floor and instantly I'm covered by the women in prayer. And the woman who went to her purse, her name is Andrea. Andrea went to her purse and she said, I've got 911 on the phone. They want you to smile. And I tell her no. And she's like, you don't want to smile? And no, I don't want to smile. Because I figure if I can't do it, then it means something's wrong. And then she wants me to speak, and I'm still telling her no. Um, and that's the last thing I remember. I remember the paramedics coming in. I don't remember leaving my studio. I remember getting in the ambulance, and several of my members jumped in the car to follow the ambulance, so that they know where they were taking me. And I remember the paramedic saying, "She can't follow that closely to the bumper," and we were laughing about it. And then it's hazy. My members locked up the studio. They got a hold of my family. They called other members down to the hospital. Um, and I remember two of my fellow instructors coming in and they're yelling to keep me awake. And Lindsay, who is one of the sweetest people I know, she always teaches a class and she tells everybody please and thank you. And I'm like, I want to be like Lindsay and teach a class and say please and thank you. But now Lindsay, who's always pleased, and she's yelling at me, and the nurse tells her it's okay. She can rest now. Somehow between that and the time that I woke up next, I'd been helicoptered to another hospital, because the hospital they took me to didn't cover strokes. So I was helicoptered to a facility that had a stroke center and went from there.
That's quite the ordeal. So this was happening to you, but you didn't want to think something's wrong. You were thinking
No.
to you're thinking to yourself, I'm this will pass, this will pass. And during that time, did you ever suspect that it was a stroke?
Never. I thought I was tired, maybe
Mm,
dehydrated, and just needed some electrolytes, and they could send me home. Like
yeah,
literally, that was what I felt was going wrong, or what I felt was happening. And then when I woke up in the second hospital, my dad was sitting to the left of the bed, and I just started crying because I knew if my dad was there, something serious happened. But I still didn't know what had happened.
yeah. So tell everybody what type of stroke you had and how you came to find out that you'd had a stroke and how long you spent in hospital.
Okay, I had a hemorrhagic stroke. There was a doctor who came into the room, and I think I was coming out of sleep, and he just walked in and he said, "So we're not going to do brain surgery." And I thought, who's he talking to? And I thought, oh, maybe I have a roommate, and maybe oh, I'm so happy for her. She doesn't have to have surgery. And I look over, and there's no roommate. There's just me in the room. So I think he sensed the puzzleness on my face, and he said, "Do you know what happened?" And I told him no, and he told me then you had a stroke. He says hemorrhagic stroke. I had blown 3 centimeters of my brain on the left side of my on the left side of my brain, obviously. He told me that there were going to be some deficits. He did not go into the deficits and told me that with a lot of hard work, that maybe I'd make it to recover 70% of my natural and physical abilities. And I remember him saying that and wondering how he got that number, how he got 70%. And it just made me angry at that time. It also challenged me to push past that number, um, because it angered me so much. The deficits that I incurred, aphasia, my speech definitely was affected. There was slurring. I had a hard time getting a grasp of days and what happened in a day. And I wasn't even clear on exactly what aphasia was until I got to rehab. Again, the whole right side of my body was paralyzed. There was some movement in the foot. There is a test that they do with swallowing to make sure you don't choke. I didn't pass that at first. And I remember being coached into what to do so that I could eat. Because at that point they wouldn't even let me have water. I think I was sucking from sponges at some point. But that was difficult. So those were it was the onset of what was the beginning of the immediate symptoms.
Yeah. Um, and so your family, how far did they have to travel to come to see you? You mentioned that you were helicoptered to another hospital.
Correct. So we lived in between, right in the middle of where I was taken. I was 40 minutes away from home when it happened. They took me 40 minutes south to the hospital. So when I came to on the day, it was my youngest son's birthday. And and he knows this story, all my kids do, seeing them in their faces and how I will never be able to get the look of their faces out of my mind. And that too was another goal setting moment to say to them, hey, this doesn't look so hot right now, but I promise you, mom's going to get better. And at that moment, I was like, anything that it takes, anything that I'm asked to do, I don't care how hard, I don't care how difficult, I don't care how much it hurts, it will be done so that I can get back to being a mom to them.
Yeah, it definitely makes you, when somebody like your doctor, for example, puts a limitation on you, you don't have to believe that. Like you can definitely work towards your own recovery in your own timeline. Um, and I love that you've used being a mum and having your children there as your rock to support you to get better and want to continue to get better. Um, so how long were you in rehab for?
I was in the hospital for 6 days. Then they moved me to rehab. And I was in, that sounds about right. I'm sorry, I'm trying to remember. Stroke was on the 1st. I was out of the hospital by the 7th. My birthday is October 20th. And I remember entering rehab and they told me that I likely was going to be there for 3 weeks. And I told them October 20th is my birthday. I want to be out of rehab by October 19th. Whatever we have to do. If I don't make it, then I'm here for another week. No complaints. But I'm telling you right now, I want to be gone October 19th. And I was discharged on October 19th. I
Mhm.
sat in a restaurant on October 20th for my 45th birthday.
Oh, that's amazing. I'm actually trying not to cry now hearing that. That's really good. Um, so you've done an incredible job at reaching your own goals. And tell everybody, did you return to work? Did you return to your dance studio?
Not right away. I've got an incredible team of instructors who really rallied together to make sure the business continued to function. The previous owner of the business is an instructor, and she took the reins and was just amazing in making sure that I knew what was going on and not necessarily stepping in as, or I hate to say this, she did not step in and treat me as if I had a disability. And for that, I will always be grateful to her because I now do. But she gave me the information and let me run with it and gave me the biggest amount of support until I could kind of get things running and build that confidence back. I had two businesses at the time, the tech business and then also the dance studio. And I made the decision to close the technical business to keep the dance fitness studio running, and then used the fitness portion of it as a part of my rehab and getting stronger to come back.
That's that's awesome that you've been able to build your passion into your therapy.
Thank you.
And so now do you still have the challenges with the hemiparesis, hemiparalysis?
Um, to some extent, yes. I kind of call it being frozen.
Hmm.
And then you go through this period of unthawing. I
Hmm.
feel like I've unthawed about 92%.
Hmm.
There still is some tightness. I've spent a lot of time imagining movement and
Mm.
then trying to match that movement. Is it always successful? No, but that's okay. It's building the fortitude and having the resilience to get through it. Am I hoping one day to have the movement back, the talent back? Absolutely. But until then, I know I can say at the end of it, if it should never come back, that I absolutely tried.
Yeah, absolutely. And what about driving? Did you return to driving?
Uh, so my license expired on my birthday.
Oh, wow.
And it did not happen right away. I had to go through what our state, obviously, driving regulations are. They agreed to give me a temporary license once my doctor cleared me. But then the state required that I go through our Office of Public Safety, and I had to have a hearing, be evaluated. That also came with having to take our state driving written test again, and then taking the driving test again. And then once I did that, I got my license back. So that period was from December. I didn't drive from October to December. In December, right before Christmas, I think the guy had pity on me. He gave me the temporary license, but I wasn't fully reinstated until February of 2020.
Mhm. It would have been great to have that independence back
Oh my
after
gosh,
that
yeah.
time.
Absolutely. But even still, getting back into the car and driving, because depth perception is very
Mm.
different. And I get why the DMV are driving rules are the way that they are. For the longest time, I stayed in the slow lane. Like I approached it very gingerly, just as I did when I was 16 and got the driver's license for the first time. There's certain things that you're kind of nervous about, but being on the highway and having trucks drive past was like, whoa. So in taking it slowly, I spent a lot of time on the streets to start. I took breaks, especially between appointments. I would park for a while and just, you can do this until it felt normal again. But it took some time. Definitely took some time.
Yeah, confidence in returning to some of those things prior to our strokes can sometimes take some time to build up to or work up to.
Definitely.
So, is there any advice that you would give to other survivors of stroke who have had similar challenges to you and are just starting out on their, um, who have just had a stroke and needing some advice? What advice would you give to them?
Absolutely. The first part of advice that I would give to them is to give yourself grace. Your body has just been through something major. The mind and the body, even though they're together, they're two very different things. So the first one is to give your body and your mind grace, and just to have patience with yourself. Diet is incredibly important. So figuring out how to refine so that you can take the healthy things in, because that's how the brain begins to heal. And then exercise, always important, building that into your daily activities. And I'm not saying run around a block or walk a mile. For me, it was as simple as just trying to reach, get that elbow up or that arm up, or pushing through the shoulder blades, just some sort of movement to begin the steps of getting back. And then my last piece of advice is to be careful with your words. And I think that that goes back to giving yourself grace. I think how we speak and the things that we want to encourage ourselves to do, we have to tell ourselves. Our minds need to hear it. And that's advice that I got from my daughter. Like I can see her sitting here right now talking to me. Grab that confidence. And even though you may not be feeling it physically, to be able to put it there mentally, and it will come physically. So those would be my words of advice.
I love that advice. The visualizing it, even if you don't believe it, over time you'll begin to believe it and it will become real. And I think
Correct.
that's just so important to those words that you said, because what we're thinking in our minds, we can hear that and we can believe that. So watching with and being kind to yourself, super valuable. I love that advice.
Absolutely. And I think it's funny when the body does it before the mind says it, and you're like, wait a minute, wait. So the
Yeah,
tiny wins are important. They are. And all of
absolutely.
them should be celebrated.
Yes,
Absolutely.
I love that. Is there anything else that you would like to add before we wrap up?
No, this has been such a pleasure, and it's been an honor to speak with you today. Thank you for having me.
Thank you. And I agree. And I appreciate you coming on and sharing all that you've been through so openly. It will absolutely help and inspire somebody else. So I definitely appreciate that. Thank you so much.
Thank you.